And we are live. Hello, everyone. Jess Clair here. I'm coming to you with the awesome Cathy Domoney. I did say that right, didn't I?
Yes.
I did, yes. Who is
well done.
Yeah, thanks. Who is, I look super red, don't I? Jeez, okay. Who is a children's author. And I just got my hands on these awesome books. So I'm very excited to share this with you, and also to share some of these amazing insights and just some of the things that you've done, Cathy, very much inspired me, which is why you're here. And I think the conversation that you have for children's books, for the message for kids, being able to provide vulnerability for our children, I think is a beautiful conversation to have. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Making the time. Thank you. And I'm just going to get this up and see who's jumping on. While I do that, I would love you to, let's have a look. We've got some people. Hello, Latoya, Laura, Pradeep. Anyone else is watching, please do say hello. Put any comments in here. Here we go. Why don't you tell me, while I'm engaging with some people as they jump on, how did you end up here? And who are you? And yeah, how did you get here on this show?
Divine intervention.
Yes.
I seem to make the right connections when I need to spread the message, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, my business started just with a message, and the business sort of developed around that. So I think I'm not a very businessy person, but I am very much about having important conversations, expanding consciousness, exploring ideas, and empowering people to find answers, and empowering children particularly, because that's who I've worked with when I was teaching years ago. And when they were empowered, the whole dynamic of their experience changed, and and the interaction between each other changed. And so that's my passion, really, is empowering young minds so that they grow into very calm, reasonable, insightful adults.
Yeah. And you've got a series called The Positive Mindset for Kids. Is that what is Positive Mindset?
It is. Yeah.
I said that. Yeah. And I just fortunately on Friday got those books, and I was very excited because I really wanted to read them, and I read them to my kids, and I was telling Cathy about it. I had one of the most incredible conversations with my daughter. So I mean, I've done a lot of work. I consider myself someone that's done a lot of work, but parenting is still a mystery to me. It's still challenging. Like, am I doing it right? Am I getting this wrong? Should I, oh my God, I yelled. I should not have yelled. All of that. And then I sat down with my daughter with these books. And one of the books is called, is it the Magic Within Me? Something like that.
The magic is inside you, yeah.
Yeah, magic is inside you. And it talks about the voices that we have, the negative and the positive voice. And she asked me, well, do you have a negative voice, Mum? And I'm like, yeah, I have a voice that tells me I'm not such a great mum. And she was like, oh, really? Like, surprised that I would ever think that.
Yeah.
And it's like I spend half my life thinking that. Right?
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful to have this conversation with her about that. So what inspired you to kind of think about this?
Well, when I was teaching, I wasn't as passionate about the teaching curriculum, which is why I'm not teaching anymore. I was passionate about who the children were, what were their passions, what were their skills, what were their strengths, what lit them up inside. And I really got a massive high out of connecting them with their inner brilliance. Oftentimes they were coming from difficult home lives, and life was a bit tough, and so to be able to show them their brilliance and really connect them to their own little genius zone, and that wasn't necessarily academic, and getting them to celebrate themselves, which then led to them being able to celebrate each other, which just created this beautiful environment in the classroom. And so I worked very intensely with these kids on, you know, all the social stuff, interactions, the words we use, why did that person do what they did, not just looking at the behavior, but the reasons why, you know, and developing that really strong sense of empathy. And what I found is when a child feels empowered and feels connected to themselves and has that high self-esteem, high confidence, they're so generous towards others. It's when they haven't got that in place that they start acting out and being unkind, and we have those sort of scenarios. So the reason that I actually wrote the books is because I wanted them to get into the hands of these young people and to show them that they have the power to connect with themselves. They have the power over what they choose to think about themselves, think about others. They have a choice of how they show up in situations, how they frame experiences, etc., etc. So it's really all about empowering the audience, which are these children, so that my hope is that they can grow into adolescence and adulthood with these core things in place, and therefore they can navigate their world a lot more successfully, peacefully, more happily, more connected to the divine, or whatever we want to call it, and just live that sort of path, being true to themselves. And I wanted to get in while they were early, because I've struggled to get onto that path. I've done so much work. I've had so much struggle and pain and, you know, misery to get to that point. And I just thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could bypass some of that and sort of empower them while they're young and get them to understand how powerful these processes can be, and that even though they're little, they can be very powerful. You know, and oftentimes our children do feel powerless. You know, they go by their parents' rules, they go by the school rules, they go by, you know, all these different things. And it's really connecting them and saying, you know, you do have a voice, you know, and showing them examples of that, and really showing them that they were put on this earth as a unique, amazing individual, and they're here for a purpose, and they're important.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And just as you described, you know, having children be connected to who they are, having them being empowered, I was thinking, I mean, this is what we do as adults now. This is all the work that we're doing as adults. And what you're doing is providing this opportunity for these books to encourage that from a very young age. And I mean, I have so many stories just from reading the books to my kids once. You know, my daughter, when I read her that book, The Magic is Within You,
It's inside you. Yeah.
It's inside you.
Yeah.
I asked her, so she then said, you know, when we talked about the positive and the negative voices, she called, so it talks about naming it. So she named her negative voice Thorny and her positive voice Olivia. And I asked her, what did they say? What sort of things does Thorny say to you? And I got an insight into what it says.
Yeah.
She said, it tells me that you love your phone more than you love me.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, to hear that, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. So yes, I'm on my phone a lot. And I tell her that, you know, I do my work on my phone. But then I said, I sucked that in and didn't react to it. And went, okay. And what does your positive voice say to you? And then this was beautiful. She went, it tells me that you do that and you work so you can make money and you can give us a house and you can drive us around and do things for us, and that you love us.
Wow.
And I'm like, so depending on her mood, that voice is going to come up, right?
Yeah.
It just gave me that insight into, she actually gets what I'm doing.
Yeah.
She does get it.
That's quite insightful, isn't it? It's quite insightful.
Yeah. It was beautiful. And I would not have known that without, you know, having those kind of conversations. So someone's just asked, is there a live broadcast happening? This is a live broadcast. This is live if you are on. And if you are here, Greg, hello, Greg, Bryce, Jess, Nicole, Nikita, if you are on, please do say hello. Very important discussion. You know, I'm so really honored to have Cathy have this conversation. And I wanted to get into the vulnerability side, because that was something you opened my mind to. And I did say to you, you know, as a mum, you're always trying to, you know, as a parent, whether you're mum, dad, or you're always trying to get it right. How do you provide a space for your kids to be vulnerable and own behavior or share things that are going on for them? What is it that you kind of need to do in your experience?
I think, every child is different. So I don't think there's a one answer fits all. There's philosophies that I live by, but I'm parenting 6 children, and I can't use the same technique with each child because they're different, they're individual, but we have philosophies by which we live. And I think one of the biggest lessons for me as a parent, because I've been doing it nearly 18 years now, is being authentic yourself.
Yeah.
Being able to say, wow, I really messed that up. That was just awful, or I behaved badly there, or I thought that was going to go well, but it didn't. Or, the way I handled that situation with you was wrong. I was tired and I was stressed, and I just, and just being really authentic and showing up, and being real and owning your own stuff. If you want your kids to own their stuff, you need to own your own stuff. They don't listen to what we say. They watch what we do.
Yeah.
And, it's not about, certainly not in this house, it's not about, I've got all the answers, I know everything, it's my way or the highway. But although because there's so many of them and I'm outnumbered, I do run quite a strict house. But within those boundaries, there's a lot of vulnerability, because we talk about feelings, we talk about when things have been messed up. And, my daughter a few years ago, I'm not going to go into the specifics, but had violated our house rules, and she came and brought that to me, and she was really upset about it, and I was quite surprised about it. And we had this discussion, and she was really upset, and she said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm not sure yet, because I said, you're my pioneer. I said, you're the first. So I said, you keep throwing things at me that I've never had to deal with before. By the time the littlest comes along, you sort of you've got a bit more of a rhythm going. And I said, just give me a chance to think about it, and she kept badgering me, and I said, no, just give me a chance to think. And I thought about it, and I came back and I said, okay, let's move on. And then she cried and she said, but I want a punishment. And I said, there's no need for a punishment, darling, because you know what you've done is wrong. You've brought it to me. You've shared that information with me. You've trusted me enough to be vulnerable and say, hey, I've really messed up here. I said, there's nothing for me to do. I said, let's just not, let's move forward and, learning and making better decisions and everything. And she was sort of, quite disappointed that I hadn't, what she thought I should have done as a parent. And I didn't need to do that. And I think, you're taking each case by case. The child, whether they're sincere in, they're going to make mistakes. And this is what I say to my guys, you're going to make mistakes. And I encourage you to, because without mistakes, we don't grow, we don't learn, we don't evolve. But it's modeling that as well, because, my husband and I, if we make a mistake in business, or we've failed an exam, or we openly share that and say, this didn't go the way we wanted. We feel really gutted about it. We put so much work into it, and, et cetera, et cetera. But, we're just going to have our moment under the duvet, and then we're going to come out and we're going to do it again because we want to get to our goal. But it's about showing up and sort of setting that example to show them we haven't got all of our ducks in the row either. We're still evolving, we're still growing, we're still learning, hopefully. I hope that's what everyone's doing out there. I hope we're still, wanting to grow and find answers and do that deep work on ourselves. So I think that's really important, to show up and be able to be vulnerable yourself, to allow space for your children to feel that it's safe to do that.
Yeah. And I do want to get into some bullying, but just on this topic while we're still talking about it. What was I going to ask you? It was right there. That's right. Crying. One of those things that people ask me a lot, and I always consider myself, is, is it okay to cry in front of your kids? And I've seen a lot in my own friend circles, and, I grapple with this myself, is like, when I'm experiencing sadness about something that's happened, like it could be a failure in business, or it could be any kind of failure, maybe in a relationship, it's like is it okay to cry in front of my child? Because I want them to feel like they can express themselves. But, we've kind of been brought up to go, you got to be strong and kind of hold it in. And it's a very confusing space. So how do you sort of navigate that?
Well, I think it's important not to put adult problems onto children. So I think that there needs to be some sort of a filter there. And I'm not saying that we need to lie to our kids. I mean, we were redundant for 10.5 months. And we came very close to losing our house. And we didn't share the ins and outs of that with the kids, but they knew that there was something big going on. They understood the bigger picture. And there were days there where I'd sit down because I'd be so scared in some moments. I thought, my goodness, we're going to lose everything. It doesn't matter what we're trying here. It's not working. And I would sit down and cry, and they'd say, why are you crying? And I say, I feel so sad that, things just aren't quite working out at the moment, but things will get better. And, we talked through it. I didn't say, I think we're going to lose the house because I didn't want them to be worrying about that. I wanted them to be tucked up in bed, be feeling safe. But I did share my vulnerability, and I did share my sadness and my worry to an extent that it wasn't a massive adult problem on their shoulders. But I think, when we shy away from this stuff, we're not giving them the opportunity to explore the full human experience, which isn't all rainbows and flowers. And, that's not how it goes. But also from some of the deepest struggles that we've had have come the greatest gifts. So they've learned that part of the experience as well. And I mean, we tend to want to give our kids the best childhood ever. And I am that parent. I want to give my kids the best childhood ever. I want them to feel loved and safe and happy. And, I want them, we go to the beach and we have fun, and I want them to have amazing memories. But I also want to prepare them for life, and life doesn't roll like that 100% of the time. So it's about, allowing them the full range of human emotion. I mean, I recently lost my father, and I think I spent 2 days in bed crying because I was just so devastated to lose my dad, because he was so, so precious to me. And they saw me through my grief. I didn't hide that from them. I was in pain at losing my dad. And it's important for them to see you as human, and that you have these emotions. And, that's my personal experience. I mean, possibly not everybody agrees with that, and that's totally fine. But, it's the first time I've lost anybody. I was absolutely floored with the pain that I felt, and they were there with me around that. My younger children didn't know my dad brilliantly because we emigrated while they were quite young. My older two grieved as well, but obviously my grief went on longer and was a bit deeper. And they loved me through it, and it was a precious time. And they cried with me. And the other day, it was interesting because my 6-year-old talks about my dad all the time, and he's very intuitive, and he'll, something will happen, you'll go, oh, that's grandpa telling us he's fine, and he talks about it quite a lot. And my older boy said, oh, don't talk about it in front of mum, you might upset her. And I said, I'm going to be upset because grandpa's dead, but we can talk about him. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to feel a bit of pain sometimes. It's okay. We can work through that together. And I think it's just about being real, because we don't want them to leave us and then have these human experiences and not know what to do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I think about it too, there are times that I get sad. I mean, I didn't know how to navigate it through my breakup. I think during my breakup, I was like, I don't really want to share this because I don't know what to say. But when I know how to frame something, I tend to share it. So, but there was one point through my breakup where I just started crying. Like I actually couldn't control it, right?
Yeah.
And my daughter said, are you okay? Why are you crying? And I just said, I just feel sad.
Yeah.
And she said, why? And I said, I don't know, because we're human and we get sad sometimes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I can think of to say. We just get sad sometimes. And then there's different moments, during just any adult cycle where I feel more emotional than usual. And I know now about 2 days, a month, I get this experience of real sadness, right? For no reason. in that moment, it's no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of women can relate to that. So in those moments, I just started saying, I don't know. She goes,
Yeah.
why are you sad? I'm like, I actually don't even have a reason.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah, I don't, and that's what I thought. I thought I want my daughter to see that feeling sad doesn't have to come with a reason, because it doesn't always seem to make any sense. So I kind of went from that approach and tried to take away because I was really worried about it, but I tried to frame it into sadness is just a human experience.
And it is,
Yeah.
but then it's about taking it one further and allowing our kids to experience that. And you know what? Their sadness might come out as rudeness. Their sadness might come out as slamming doors, and it's about being in tune and allowing them to have the human experience. And I've noticed with some people, and I actually posted this in my community the other day, that, I see some parents, some adults, and I'm talking professional adults and things, holding children to a higher standard than the standard that they themselves live by. And our kids aren't robots. They're allowed to have massive anger sometimes. They're allowed to do that. And if you suppress that, it comes out as illness, or it comes out as depression, or it comes out. So the more we allow them to appropriately express that, and I know that my husband works away, and he came home, and we were in the kitchen, and my daughter spoke to me so badly that my husband sort of looked at me and went, "Are we going to let that fly?" Do you know what I mean? He sort of looked at me like, "Are you going to seriously?" And I just sort of winked at him, because he didn't know the build up to that, because he hadn't been here. And she was suffering on that day. I knew the reasons why she was suffering on that day. She was being left out of something, and it was hurtful and whatever. And she was lashing out at me, and I allowed her to lash. Now, that doesn't mean I allow my kids to just run riot all over me. It means that in that moment, that's what she needed to do. That's how she needed to express it. I understood the reasons why, and I held that space for her.
Yeah, wow. Now that takes something. How did you, and this is, and I think it's probably a good opportunity to kind of go into the site and all the instances you've got, because one of your books is called Dear Bully, right? And you have what I would consider a very high level of understanding, empathy, and compassion. And you don't even like using the term bully, like it's label, but for bullying, right? And you could say that how your daughter was speaking to you in that was kind of like, it was bullying. It's like bullying you, right? In a way. But that's not how you view this. So talk to me about bullying, because I know everyone really does want to hear about this part. This is something so many parents deal with, if not all of them, at some point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. How do you distinguish this?
Look, it's not easy. That's the first thing I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And as enlightened as I consider myself to be, my instant reaction if someone hurts one of my children is anger, because my children are my cubs, and I'm going to defend them. I would die for them, and throw myself in front of a bullet for them, and all the rest of it. And so my first feeling is anger, because I'm human. But historically, when we've dealt with these bullying things, and I want to make it clear, we have really, really suffered from bullying in this house. Like we've had hospitalization. There's been lots of been lots of things that my kids have been through. They've been physically hurt. There's been some serious stuff going on over the years. And so it's difficult when you're in that place, because it's the easiest thing to do is to go to anger and go to that sort of revenge type mentality, and be, and I remember one incident, my daughter, from an older boy, had been physically and verbally, abused, hurt, and she was very vulnerable, and she really, really upset her, as any assault would. This is what it is. Just because it happens in the playground between young people, it doesn't, if it's a physical attack, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And it's shaken her up, and I was furious. I was so mad. And I remember cooking dinner, and the steam was in my face. I was just crying. I was so angry. I didn't know what to do. But I don't like to react in any extreme emotion. I'm one of those annoying people that, I'll step back and I'll think about it, and I'll come back to you when I'm got my intelligent head on. And so I slept on it, and I'm lucky I've got training in this area. I've got professional qualifications, and I had my sort of intelligent head on in the morning. I thought, okay, how am I going to resolve this? How can we move forward together, all of us, not us versus them? How can we all move together, to solve this? And so I did write a letter to the child, but I didn't write it as a hateful letter. I wrote it as if I was his mum. So I thought, if I'm a very maternal person, as anyone that knows me will tell you. And I thought, okay, if I was this boy's mum, what would I say to him? So it was a love letter to him from a mother to a son, but it had discipline in there. I did say, the choices you've made have not been the right choices. You've hurt a whole family here, etc., etc. However, you apologized, which shows me that you know right from wrong, and it's really brave to apologize. Some grown-ups don't do that, etc., etc. So it was a real sort of letter of motherly love to this child. And I left it unsealed and gave it to the principal and said, do with it what you will. This is how I've coped with this situation. And she read it and decided to share it with the family. And it was a real turning point for that family and the school, because, generally speaking, people that are happy don't go out hurting people. So although the actions were not right, and of course, consequences need to be addressed and all of that sort of thing. And I'm absolutely, somebody that is an advocate for positive discipline. But why are they doing it? And so that's my next question as a parent when I go into these situations where my children have been bullied. And remember, they've been hospitalized. You're asking, why did you do it? What's happening with you? How can we help you? How can we help you to heal from whatever it is that's hurting you, to save anybody else from having to suffer from this acting out of your pain?
Wow. I think if anyone's watching here, I'd be curious to get any comments or questions that you guys might have, because it's just not a typical response, Cathy, and I really honor you for, I as a mum, my daughter just got hit in the face by, I think I was telling you about it, a boy last week we're not even sure what with. It wasn't even that bad, really. She came home and she had this big, Band-Aid across her head, and I was so furious. Yeah. And I took it off and there was no mark.
Yeah.
She's like, oh my God, someone hurt me. And then I went, what happened? And I couldn't even see.
Yeah.
But still, she was very upset, right? So it still was not okay. Something happened.
Of course. Yeah.
And the teacher was great. The teacher talked to the mum, and I talked to the mum, and we all did. But you're right. Like, I was just so mad that someone had hurt my child,
Yeah.
And because I had spoken to you, I went and tried to empathize with this little boy, and I got to speak to the mum, and she was very much like, my son's got ADHD. He just got put on new medication this day that this happened, so I can understand he's trying to feel all the feels, and he acted out, and my daughter seemed to get it. But I know that this is a situation that every parent is currently dealing with. And schools don't know how to deal with this, So what would you suggest? Like, what could you give parents who either have a child that might be acting out, or have a child that's there that they might be the one at the effect of this?
Look, it's a complicated issue. It really, really is. And I don't think there's any one answer to answer that question. I mean, I can only speak from my own experiences, and I can't speak for everybody because it's too complex an issue. But, from our point of view, we've had this issue many, many times. And, each time I go through the same process. Like, firstly, I'm enraged because how dare you hurt my child, and they're so amazing and they didn't deserve that, and don't you know who we are, and I go through all of that. And then I sort of get, again, calm down, allow my rational brain to come forward and recognize that this is another child. And, you know, I'm lucky that I've got the unique experience of having been a teacher and a mother. So I've been able to see it from both sides. And I've seen children who have been involved in bullying behavior who have been struggling with so much. And, you know, oftentimes, especially obviously when you're teaching, there's confidentiality. So you can't discuss each side with each person. You have to, you know, mediate between and try and calm things down. But, you know, I've often thought about the parents who have dealt with, who have the victim, let's call it, you know, the child, the victim. If they only knew what this other child was going through, I know how amazing those parents are, and I know they'd feel love for this child, you know, and I because that's who they are. If they only knew, but of course we couldn't share that information. So all you could do is try and mediate between. But I think, you know, from our point of view, we've always tried to practice empathy. Now, that sounds really easy, but it's not easy when you're applying it to a situation that's not convenient to you. And by that, I mean, you know, this person has hurt us. You know, why should I feel empathy with this person? Well, let's try and feel empathy. Let's try and see where they're coming from. Let's try and understand it. Because you know what, that also empowers, if your child has been the victim and you can look at the other child's circumstances and think, why do you think that might have happened? You know, what might they be going through? It takes away the sort of pressure from the victim child to go, it's because of me. It's because I'm faulty in some way that they've picked on me. No, it's nothing about you. It's all about them. And, you know, and we sort of look about, and my kids roll their eyes at me. I'll tell you that for sure. Because things will happen and I say, well, what's happening with that person? They're like, oh, Mom, just take my side. And I'm like, well, let's just look at it, you know, let's look at it holistically. Let's try, because I just feel like if we can all be part of the solution, if we can all come together and find a solution together, then moving forward, it's going to be so much more of a positive experience for everybody.
Yeah.
But we tend to go into the us versus them mindset. And I get it. I 100% get it. Because as I say, that's my first go-to is how dare you hurt my child? But then you sort of move through it a bit and you think, okay, let's work this out. Let some of my training come forward. What could be the possible reasons here? What could be the possible solutions here? Can we do this together? And, you know, oftentimes, you know, there might be something going on in the family that's really devastating, and the parents might not be quite as engaged as they normally are because they're dealing with something big and the child's scared and lonely and acting out. And, you know, it's about, I always think, what if that was my sister? What if that was my brother? What if that was my friend? You know, is there a way that we could come together? And look, it's not going to work 100% of the time. It's not, you know, but I think it's sort of a bold move to try and change the conversation a little bit and see if we can come together and, you know, build bridges rather than burn them even further.
100%. And it's very true. You said bold, right? So again, I go back to this after speaking with you and reading the Dear Bully to my daughter. And it was great for her because this had just happened with her. I talked to her about AD. You know, this boy had just changed his medication. And then I was like, I think I told you this, where I said to my daughter, let's write him a letter. And she's like, nah, no, not interested at all.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to write him a letter. And she was like, okay, whatever, whatever. But then I noticed that was really confronting. The idea of it was really confronting, you know, because I read your book, Dear Bully, and I'm considering some of the things that you put in there, and I'm like, wow, we don't do this. We don't ask these questions. We don't consider what it's like. And I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen. We don't have, like, the way I always think about it in neuroscience is like, there's no brain patterns for this. So our brains are not geared to do things we don't know where there's going to be, like, kind of a safe solution. This is a whole new place. I have no idea what's going to happen when I do this. It could be met with, like, I just don't know. And so it is a bold move to take on writing this, this family a letter. It is a bold move to take a community approach to bullying, to actually, try and engage the parent and actually, honor the child who has done the bullying, but at the same time honor your child who's been hurt. Like,
Absolutely.
This is a really brand new space, without dividing, without conquering, but actually trying to bring, this takes someone really trying to bring some leadership here. That's scary.
Yeah, it is confronting. And, asking the tough questions, then you've got to deal with the answers. And not everybody wants to deal with the answers. And I get it, but there's got to be a shift, I feel personally. And as I said, we've done this numerous times with numerous different incidents, and it's been very successful every time for us. That's our personal experience. Because, when you've got somebody that's really, really struggling and they're lashing out, what they're needing is love, and what they're being is unlovable. So it's about sort of looking beyond that and trying to help that person find their way. And, I am a great believer in it takes a village, and I live in a community like that, like we all look after each other in our community. And I believe that we've lost a little bit of that because of our jobs, because of the pressure, because of social media. We don't have, a lot of the time we don't know our neighbors, and we're so busy and we're going here, going there. But I do feel like we need to be looking at helping and supporting, because what, maybe when I'm grieving for my dad, maybe I miss something with my kids, and maybe someone else picks up on it and brings it to me, and I say, thank you so much, I dropped the ball then because I was grieving. Or maybe someone goes, you should sort your kids out, this happened. I mean, nothing has happened, but you know what I mean? Like, we don't take that step and think, what's that family going through? Is everything okay? Is there some way I can support that family? Can we do it together? We tend to go, sort that kid out, leave my kid alone, that's it. But it doesn't tend to, in my experience, solve the problem.
No, it doesn't get to the source.
We need to have another conversation and look to the reasons why. And we've had a situation where a girl was giving my daughter a hard time several times, and I felt that she was going through something, so I went to speak to the school and said, I think this girl might be going through something, I think maybe you need to step in and support her a little bit. And then my daughter also at times felt she was going through something, so even though she'd had a hard time with her, she would vocalize to the teachers, I think you need to step up and help this child. And she lives with us now, and she's part of our family. So it can work. And this person just needed to be scooped up and needed some help and some love and some support while her family was going through a difficult time.
Yeah.
And we all go through difficult times. Some of us are blessed to have a support system in place. Some of us are not. So yeah. I think we need to be aware, and maybe we can be that support for somebody.
Yeah. Look, I think what you're saying is beautiful. And I think if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is potentially, bullying's been an issue for a long time. Like, if ever has it not, it just has always been around. Realistically, when I look even at parliaments and politics, and I think bullying's everywhere. I don't think, it's not as if adults escape it. It turns into domestic violence, right?
Absolutely,
then we then call it control and domination and a whole lot of other things. So if this is something that is like human, and if what I'm hearing you say is, if we have those moments and notice how angry you get when someone has hurt your child, allow that to be there, because that happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let it, you're human. You're going to go through the process, of wanting to get very angry, but it's a process. It's like you move through that and then you go into a space of, what I can hear is like a responsibility. It's like, how can I now make a difference to this? Now, not like I hate using responsibility because usually it's like a burden for people. This isn't a burden. It's like an opportunity to make a difference. Like, what could I possibly do that's never been done before? And then take that approach. Like, what is I'm going to go and write this letter to this mum, right? Because it terrifies me.
Yeah, but it's writing a letter. If you're writing a letter from a place of love and support, it shouldn't terrify you. You're reaching out and connecting and just saying, whatever it is you need to say, but from a place of love and support. And generally speaking, and as I said, it's not going to work 100% of the time. I can only speak to my experiences and the experiences that I've had with the school counsellors using my letters and things like that have come back to me and go, oh my God, that was so powerful. That was so, so powerful for everyone involved. And I'm like, that's great. Let's have this conversation. And it's about having conversations. And I've connected with a lady in America, and everyone calls her Grandma Sparky. And she gives out these blue ribbons and it says, who you are matters. And she's got this massive movement of giving out these blue ribbons and honoring people for who they are. And she's had amazing experiences with this in schools and having these really intense conversations with the child who has chosen to bully and the victims that child has affected. And, so much vulnerability came up in these conversations. And, the person who was displaying this bullying behavior was held space to be super vulnerable and say, this is what I'm going through. This is how I'm hurting. This is my pain. This is why I did this to you. I mean, these were teens. I mean, my book's more for sort of primary school. But, what I've noticed from being a teacher is when a child is labeled a bully, that follows them around for a long, long time. If you say you're actually just demonstrating bullying behavior is so much easier to change than how you've been labeled as who you are. And so, what Grandma Sparky did in these high schools was create this safe space to say the behavior is the problem here. It's not who you are. Why are you displaying this behavior? And it allowed that person space, that person who hurt others, to say, I've been displaying this behavior because I'm going through this, this, and this. And it was an expression of my pain. I wanted to share my pain. And that's addressed in the book as well, where the character's throwing out a boomerang and it comes back and hits him, because you're trying to share your pain, but in doing that, you're getting more pain.
Yeah.
And, by allowing that space to separate the behavior from the person, it gives that person a chance to change. And that's the approach that we had in my classroom, that we identified the behaviors that were not acceptable in any way. And then we reminded the person who they were. So we held space and we all said, just remember, you are so funny. You're so clever. Remember when you did that? That was so kind. And you're reconnecting that person to who they really are. And it's not a series of behaviors that they've done, which are a symptom of pain. I know that's a lot to get your head around. And it is really complex. And as I said, there's so many different characters involved and it's not going to work all of the time, but I'm hoping that in trying to seek connection, we help to heal these situations and change the dynamic of all of the interactions moving on from that point.
Yeah. What I can hear you saying is take a bold move, try something new, and have new conversations grounded in compassion and from connection. And like you said, you know, what am I afraid of? I don't even know. But I haven't even sat down to write it. But I know that I sit there and start to write, thinking about this boy and coming from connection. I can't really screw that up.
Mm.
You can't really. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. There's been a couple of comments here. So if anyone does have any other questions for Cathy as well, I'm not sure who put this on there, but my eldest was chased after school in grade 6, last day of school, by 3 boys who were threatening to bash him. They threw a broken bottle at him, and all because he had olive skin and his father is part Indian. It was so traumatizing, and I struggled to deal with it at the time. He's now 19.
Mm.
Yeah, these are things that happen. And look, I know that this is going to bring up, because like I said, this is a big issue, right? This is a big issue for people. This is going to bring up those things. And it's, you know, chased by 3 boys because he had olive skin.
Mm. Yeah. And it's not acceptable in any way. And I'm certainly not suggesting that it is, you know, but I think if there had been an opportunity while those kids were young to heal that part of them, then they wouldn't have felt the need to chase that person's son and to traumatize him in that way. And I think, you know, as I said, it's a really difficult issue, and I myself have struggled with it, you know, because as I said, my kids have been hospitalized through bullying, so I totally get it, and I'm very, very fiercely defensive of my kids. But what I've known is, in our situations, when we've reached out to those people, we've discovered who they are, and we've helped them to move on from that behavior. And as I said, obviously it's not going to work in 100% of the cases. It depends what sort of families they come from. Are they receptive to that? It depends how the school's handling the situation. You know, there's so many variables, which is why I said I can only speak from my experience. There's not one answer here for everything, but it's certainly a contribution to a wider conversation that is worth considering.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That was from Susie. Thank you, Susie. And someone else has written, I wish there was more holistic approach used more frequently by the majority of the public. This will require a whole lot from parents, unfortunately. And look, I always think about this, it's very like anything. When we go to conceptualizing things, it can sometimes get a bit blurry. But when you bring it back to, like you said, you go from your personal experience. I mean, in this case, Susie, you know, you had your child, your eldest, there were 3 boys. You know, to really be able to impact it, you need to sit down with those 3 boys and go, like you said, you'd have to understand those 3 boys. Maybe once they got together, they were doing something because there were 3 of them, you know, and you'd have to sit down with their parents. Like on the situation itself, it requires that kind of community approach, but you've got to look at it as an individual case. Like you said, there's no one way to do this. There's not like one solution, but all those people sort of need to be involved in some way in a solution. And if they're open to it, and someone's got to lead it, and someone's got to take the leadership role of creating that. And I think what's beautiful is your books give people who want to take a leadership role in, you know, creating this opportunity for a community approach. You provide this great opportunity for people to ask certain questions, to talk to their kids, to have their kids opened up, and at least get a kind of space to have a new conversation about bullying. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I've had encounters with adults that have been pretty vile towards me, actually. And I've reached out to them and said, are you okay? What's happening with you? Because it seems to me like you're in pain. And they've revealed, like, gone, oh, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, you know, and I'm like, okay, I get it. You know, and instead of being reactionary, sort of separate yourself a little bit and look at, you know, I think we're very quick to be offended. We're very quick to react in a moment. And I just do believe in the power of the pause, and I do, you know, try to practice that as much as I can. And I'm human, I'm not always going to get it 100% right. Don't tell my kids that, obviously. No, I do tell my kids that, but you know, it's just about trying to see us all as connected, you know, and thinking, how would I respond to a friend? You know, would I give them a chance?
Yeah, even a partner, right? We give our partners a whole lot of compassion. Well, mostly, you know. It's like we can always see past them. You can have a reaction, you can see past it. You know, it's sort of like what I'm hearing you say is you can actually really get that everyone is just human. Like everyone is just this human being, and there's so much going on with them that you'll never know if you never ask.
And I'm not suggesting that any sort of behavior should be tolerated, any sort of negative behavior I'm not suggesting that, you know. I do believe in, you know, having accountability, being responsible for your actions, facing consequences if you need to, but then I feel like there needs to be another conversation on top of that. You know, absolutely own it, absolutely be responsible, be accountable, say sorry, do the penance, whatever it is, but then let's have another conversation on top of that and say, right, what's going on? How are we going to avoid this moving forward? You know, and this is what we do in our house when we, you know, we're holding space. Going back to the parenting conversation, is if one of my kids does something, or, you know, has made a big mistake, or is, you know, going through something, and, you know, my response and my husband's response is, we know that you're going to navigate your way through this, because we know who you are, and you are these wonderful things. So we know this is going to be okay. We know you're going to come back to who you are, and it's all going to be fine, you know. But in the instances where the children possibly haven't got that support around them, where are they going to get it from? You know, and if we, oftentimes their parents need that conversation as well, because they've been through it and they've handed it down to their kids, and it's a cycle, you know. So I wonder if by entertaining the possibility that we could have these sort of conversations, whether there's a chance of disrupting the cycle.
100%. And that's why, look, realistically, that's why I had you on this show, is because I want everyone to get access to these conversations, these books, these new approaches, these new ways of what's possible, you know, as an opportunity. So, and that, if there is any questions, guys, please do ask them, but we're just going to close up. And I just want to give an opportunity for you guys to get access to Cathy's books. They're on Amazon. You'll post a link if you can in here so people can easily access it to where they can get your books. And the names of them are, I put them on a post a couple of days ago, but for those of you who haven't seen them, they're Dear Bully. Let me see if I can get this. Yeah, that's all. You do them.
Okay, so there's Dear Bully, I Am Perfectly Me, Am I Weird, Pop Finds His Smile, my lovely moles, and The Magic Is Inside You.
And the magic is inside you. It's funny, that's right. Am I weird? My daughter was arguing with you in that. She was like, but she's not weird.
Yeah, but
yeah,
you
but
see, that
like,
was my daughter. That's based on my daughter, that book, and everybody, she's fiercely been herself since she was little, and we've always encouraged that, and everybody called her weird, and we had to work through that with her. This was a long time ago, so people weren't as enlightened, you know, possibly as they are now. But yeah, it was an interesting time to navigate, because we've always wanted our kids to just be who they are, whoever that is, you know. And so that book is about encouraging you to just be who you are, uniquely, beautifully, exactly who you are, and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, actually.
Yeah, no, it was really great, because I've I've had these conversations with my daughter sometimes, and she's even said, you don't do things like other people do them. So this book was great because I'm like, you know how I'm weird, babe? You know how I do things differently?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's me being me. And she goes, oh yeah, okay, I can see that. So
Yeah.
it was so great.
Yeah.
I love the books. I cannot speak highly enough of these books, really. I want every child on this planet to get access to these conversations and these questions in their families. So yes, please do put your link in here. They're on Amazon. Cathy Domoney.
Cathy
Domoney.
Yeah, Cathy Domoney. Yeah,
Cathy
yeah.
Domoney.
Yeah, it's Do Money. If you're trying to spell it, it's Do Money. Because I got accused of being a scammer the other day because I've got money in my surname, but that is my honest to God surname. So yeah, it's Cathy Domoney, D-O Money. That's it.
Do Money. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cathy. Thank you so much for writing, really having whatever it was that you took the message and the calling to go and write these books to make a difference to kids, and also to parents like myself, who are kind of grappling and a bit confused about how to navigate this space, because it is so important and we all want to be great for our kids. So thank you for creating these books and making them available. They have made such a difference, and I've only read them once. So thank you.
Awesome.
And thank you for being on this show. If you would like to hear any more about Cathy, she's going to post some links in here so that you have access to her. And is there anything else you want to add?
I think for any parent that's on here worrying if they're doing a good job, the very fact that you're worrying about it means that you're most likely doing a good job. When we're reflecting on ourselves and what we're doing and showing up and wanting to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be for our kids, that's pretty much all that we can do is show up and do that. So keep going. It's a complicated business, but keep on keeping on.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Cathy. Thank you, everyone that tuned in. If you're still watching, thank you, guys. And you guys have, until next week, have an